Hello?
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the EU CTBTO side event, EU and CTBTO Perspectives on Promoting Gender Equality and Empowerment of Early Career Women in STEM. Today we will have a little bit of a different panel discussion because it will be a newsroom live interview. Which is in fact inspired by our EU-funded initiative Newsroom project to provide journalism training for the CTBTO youth group, members of which two are here today. As you know, the EU has a very strong partnership with the CTBTO. And together we have invested and we're still investing in the next generation and especially in the empowerment of the next generation of women and women in STEM. The two young CTBTO youth group members and early career women in STEM will be interviewing Dr. Floyd and also Ambassador Stefan Klemen, the head of delegation of the EU delegation here in Vienna. The interviewers are Aline Olvera from Mexico. She is a bachelor in earth science and seismology at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, and she is specialized in disaster risk reduction studies. She works in the regional focal point for Latin America and the Caribbean. And she is part of the CTBTO and the CTBTO Youth Group Monitoring Program 2022. And then we have also Madalene Wanyanga from Kenya. She is a bachelor in geology at the University of Nairobi, specialized in applied geophysics and seismology, and works at Sandrose, an African project management and consulting firm specialized in energy transition, climate change, and development. She did also the citizen journalism training that was funded by the EU. So I think she is well prepared for this afternoon. So now I will pass the floor to the two interviewers to ask our two guests also to talk about the young women and promoting gender equality, but also about the strong relationship that the EU has with the CTBTO. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. I am Magdalene Wanyaga. I am from Kenya, and I'm a geologist and a geophysicist. I am really excited to be here today. So we'll start. We have a little bit of some speech before we can ask the questions, so I'll go ahead. According to the 2021 World Bank data, women and girls make up nearly half of the world's population, which is 49.6%. This translates to nearly half of the world's population, world's potential. In addition to being a fundamental human right, gender equality is crucial for the creation of peaceful societies, the realization of human potential, and sustainable development. Furthermore, it has been demonstrated that empowering women boosts economic growth and productivity. It is also crucial to achieve equal opportunities in leadership and decision-making. As a CTBTO youth group member, I have benefited from the CTBTO support for our career women in STEM through a variety of opportunities, such as speaking in high-level events, building my capacities through the SNT, the Science Diplomacy Symposium, and the Citizen Journalism Academy, and by learning by doing. I would like to highlight one in particular, that is last year in September 2021, where I got to brief the UN Security Council on the promotion of the CTBT through science and including the young generation in the sphere of nuclear disarmament to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the CTBT. These opportunities have shaped my professional life and helped me understand how, as a scientist, I can use science communication to inform policy making. And now it's my pleasure to give the floor to my fellow CTBTO youth group member, Aline Olvera.
Thank you so much. I am Aline Olvera from Mexico, and I'm really glad to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Okay, so as a physicist, I have had the chance to be in several teams where I was the only woman. And this has to be, of course, both challenging and intimidating. But this has not stopped me for any second to go after the projects that I really love or that I really want to do. In this sense, I got to share my experience and my research in the Mexican Institute of Youth. In 2019, I was selected for a scholarship in the International Exchange Program Index in 2019, and of course, being part of the CTBTO mentoring program this year. Okay, so although we have achieved a lot in terms of gender equality, much more work towards this has to be done, in particular for young professionals, women working in science, or women working in nuclear disarmament, or other STEM domains. For this particular reason, I want to thank you, both Dr. Floyd and Ambassador Clement, for being here in this interview, because we can see clearly the importance of this topic and acting upon it. So both CTBTO and European Union have made very clear commitments, and there is substantive progress. In this sense, the first question goes to you, Dr. Floyd, and the question is, could you tell us how the CTBTO is promoting gender equality at an organizational level and broader?
Thank you so much. And before I answer the question, I just want to say thank you to the EU for this side event. What a great idea to have Stefan and myself grilled by two of the CYG members. This is a blood sport, I think. But just one question, though. I just want to check the audience. How many of you here have addressed the UN Security Council before you were 30 years old? Just checking.
I have.
You did? GA, it's almost there. That's great. But Maggie, as she just told us, Maggie did that. She's a high achiever. She made me feel this big as I was over 60 years old, sharing the same panel.
Thank you.
I got to say, I was so proud to have Maggie, at that same panel, that same session of the UN Security Council, and addressing with the passion of youth. And it was a wonderful thing. So well done, Maggie. That was super.
Thank you so much.
And now, should I answer the question? Sorry, my time is up. What are we doing to address gender balance? That is a good question. I wondered, as Executive Secretary, whether I should set a goal, for gender parity by a certain date. And you know what? I didn't. I didn't set a goal because I wasn't sure what goal would be ambitious enough. I wanted it to be a stretch, or what goal would be, too low, too high. I just couldn't get a feel for what those bounds were like. And so we still do not have a goal set. But I got to tell you, we have a process. We have a process, and we are absolutely committed to competency-based recruitment. And so we have a rigorous process of assessing the competency of people that apply for jobs in the CTBTO. Unashamed, no excuses. It's a competency-based approach. But then after that process is completed, I, as Executive Secretary, get a very short list of the cream of the crop. And when I get that list, the first thing I do is I go down the column, which is title. And it says Mr., Ms., Mr. And I go to the Mrs. and I ask, why not? That's all I do. I'm a simple chap. I take a simple approach and ask the question, why not? That's what we do to address gender balance. Now, does it work? Well, for the last 6 years, prior to me joining the organisation, the numbers, the percentage of women in the professional and higher levels has gone around 31%, plus or minus half or 1%. 6 years has just hung there. Now, we are 39-point-something%. We'll be 40-something early next year. So I think it's working. At the director level, at the highest management level, we have managed to sustain 50% women. And at the P5 level, a very serious, management responsibility and leadership role within the organisation, the percentage of women has changed from 25% now to 45%. This is so exciting. That's what we do.
Thank you so much, Dr. Floyd, for these incredible insights on what the CTBTO is already doing to promote gender parity. Now, turning to the European Union, could you, Ambassador Clement, tell us about the EU's role in promoting gender equality at the organizational level and broader?
Thank you very much, and it's a great pleasure to be on this panel. I'm particularly grateful to my friend Rob, of course, to have accepted. And of course, it's also very nice to be grilled by the youth group. I can feel the heat already, but I will try to answer the questions. As you might very well know, of course, gender equality and women empowerment in the EU, and I will give you now the basic features of EU gender equality policy, but also diversity is a very important political objective for the European Union, and it's basically part already of the founding treaties. It's already mentioned in the Rome Treaty from 1957. And of course, over the decades, a lot of progress in this regard has been made, but in particular, the past few years, more, concrete implementation policy action was also developed, and the EU adopted in 2020 a gender equality strategy, which for over 5 years, which basically necessitates that all gender equality considerations have to be mainstreamed and factored in all areas of policy, and it's structured around a number of subject. And just to mention a few is, of course, gender equal economy is one important issue, but also the importance of funding programs, that all programs basically, when it comes to funding, they should be also assessed from a gender equality perspective. And in fact, the current situation is that 85% of all programs fulfill this criteria. And then, of course, to implement this strategy, there's a gender action plan which foresees how to implement this. And we have also appointed a gender equality ambassador for gender equality and diversity in 2021. And she is basically making sure that all these policy objectives, they will be factored into political dialogues, into kind of preparation of documents and other issues. So this is, of course, mainly focused, first of all, for EU internal policies. But of course, in order to be coherent, the same kind of mechanisms and objectives have also to apply for all external policy areas, and in particular, of course, in the work with international organizations, UN and others, and CTBT here in Vienna, of course, one of the important ones. And of course, it's our objective also to reach our targets together with these organizations, and I'm very happy that what Rob just said, that in your area, gender equality has been massively improving in the past years. And last but not least, maybe to mention, together with Rob, we also, as youth delegation, gender champions here in Vienna, and we have set these targets. And I myself, just from the practical perspective, I live in a delegation where for sure more than 50% are women. My deputy is a woman. So in my case, these policies from the EU is fully implemented. Of course, this is not always, how to say, straightforward in certain areas where there's a shortage of applications, a shortage of personnel, a shortage of readiness of persons to go to certain places and so on. But in principle, I may finish to answer the question by saying for the EU, this is a key policy priority. It will remain, and it is in the process of being implemented, and significant progress is being made. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. It's really, really great to hear that the European Union is paying such this attention to the legal framework to ensure that any project or any initiative that is led by the European Union takes actually into consideration this principle of gender equality. It's really, really good to hear that. Okay, so the CTBTO works continuously to universalize and push forward the entry into force of the CTBT. In these terms, the second question goes also to Dr. Floyd. What role could young women play in promoting universalization and entry into force of the CTBT, and how does the CTBTO seek to include them in achieving these goals in a more active role?
Thank you. And let's just set the context nice and clear. When it comes to the health impacts of nuclear exposure following a nuclear weapon detonation, it's fascinating that it's not equal amongst men and women. It's fascinating that women are biologically more vulnerable to the impact of ionizing radiation than men. The data is pretty stark when you look at solid cancer resulting from ionizing radiation post-1945 in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, is that the incidence for women is significantly higher than for men. I mean significantly higher, twice as high. Oh my goodness. I set that context to say women should have a powerful voice when it comes to advocating for a ban on nuclear tests, because they are being disproportionately affected. That's quite apart from disproportionate activities and psychological effects and stigma and discrimination, etc. But what do we do in this space of encouraging and supporting those to promote the treaty, its universalization, its entry into force? Well, there's quite a number of different things we do. Let me just touch on a few of them. The CTBTO Youth Group is one of those, and you are two excellent representatives. Hands up any others in the room that are part of the CYG, the CTBTO Youth Group. Oh yeah, oh, right over here. So it's a bit like the football, is that there's the Australian crowd or something, and everyone else is from Argentina. But I'm getting some healing from my therapist on that. Great to see so many of the youth groupies here, and some of them also have been CTBTO fellows and have done a research program last year. There's others that are in that program this year. This is something that we do, and we also look at making sure that there is strong female representation in those particular programs. But the CTBTO Youth Group is about providing training, input, awareness, and preparation for advocacy, for education, for reaching out, media activities, as Maggie mentioned. All of this is a part of the CYG, the CTBTO Youth Group activities. So that's one thing we do in this space. I'm not going to talk about our mentorship program because I'm going to respond to that with the next question, but that fits into the same kind of space. One of my international gender champion goals is to see a more even gender balance in those that receive capacity building training opportunities through the CTBT, and that is through the CTBTO, and that is quite a challenge, as you would well appreciate, because of the imbalance through STEM. Then it just flows on. But we are taking actions to try and see the representation of women in those capacity building opportunities, rise and rise. There are many different things that we do, but one thing that we love to do is to give women platform. You two have it today, and that's really important to us.
It's impressive to hear what the CTBTO is doing, and thank you very much for the opportunities that you're giving us as early career women. Shifting to the EU again, in the last years, more and more attention internationally has been given to the youth and their role in pushing forward and resolving various global issues. We're seeing this also in arms control, non-proliferation, and disarmament spheres. We understand that the EU pays a special attention to the youth and sees that there is potential to impact and achieve its non-proliferation and disarmament goals. Ambassador Clement, how does the EU engage with the youth in the advancement of non-proliferation and disarmament objectives?
Thank you very much for this very pertinent question. And in fact, just to start by saying that the European Union has in fact designated this year, year 22, as the year of youth. And this is basically to recognize the importance of youth in policy making and in carrying forward to a better and more prosperous future. Why in particular in arms control and non-proliferation, since you mentioned this, I mean, areas like arms control and non-proliferation, but of course also climate change, these are all kind of areas where long-term policy making and long-term planning is absolutely crucial. And of course, this is absolutely imperative to involve future generations into this. And I guess just as a side remark, CTBT is a very good example because as it was mentioned this morning, 25 years after conclusion of negotiation, the treaty is not into force, unfortunately. But still, this is very important to motivate the next generation to look into kind of ways how to overcome these obstacles and to finally achieve entry into force. And this is necessary. But more perspective from the EU and non-proliferation, as you know, the EU policy non-proliferation is based on a strategy against the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, which was adopted already quite some while ago. And in this context, the cooperation with international organizations is one of the key drivers. But of course, also engaging youth into this kind of implementation is crucial. Let me recall that the UN Secretary General's agenda for disarmament, for instance, is referring to youth as the ultimate force for change. And this already tells everything in just a few words. And I think the EU is also financially contributing with international organizations through a number of programs. And in fact, since 2004, since the strategy was adopted, more than 300 million euro were spent on these programs. And in these programs also, there are always some elements to support participation of kind of societal actors, but also youth. And one of these kind of actions is the so-called EU non-proliferation consortium, which is kind of a cooperation of think tanks who basically organize workshops, conferences, and all other kind of academic exchanges. And they are particularly tasked when they organize these kind of events to ensure equal participation of gender, to ensure diversity, to ensure kind of a variety of views being presented. And in this context, there's also the Young Women and Next Generation initiative, which is a central element basically to motivate young women to participate in these activities. And this is, for instance, carried out through the so-called mentorship program, which is aimed at young women in undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate studies. And they have the opportunity to kind of exchange with experts or senior people in this field, and this allows them to discuss kind of course, the substance of the field, but also career opportunities and networking possibilities. And then in addition, you all have heard, I guess, from the so-called Horizon Europe program, which is a research cooperation program, but here in the Vienna context, this program, and I would like to say this for the sake of completeness, this program is used in the context of the International Atomic Energy Agency, where we have the instrument of Marie Skłodowska-Curie fellowships, and the EU is financing a large part of this program through Horizon Europe. And this gives approximately annually 100 female students the opportunity to do fellowships or to participate in kind of academic activities of other nature. But let me maybe end answering this question and say that EU is, of course, from its origin in the 50s, a peace project. And of course, peace is very important to be carried forward through all kind of generations. And of course, for the next generation, youth is very important to reach this goal. And in fact, it's the only guarantee, the only chance to reach this goal. And this is why youth is being factored in as a very clear dynamic element in this EU strategy, in particular in the non-proliferation and disarmament area. Thank you.
That sounds amazing. Thank you so much. As a young professional myself, I can totally confirm the importance of these capacity building activities, in particular activities that help us get a better knowledge of other fields rather than the ones that we are actually working on. As a part of the CTBT mentoring program, I have had a chance to enhance and change the way that I see myself as a woman working in STEM. I've learned that female strong leaders are always there to help and are willing to give us some tips for all the younger generations. Also, I do feel more confident when dealing with hard situations, as the workshops have been incredibly useful. Women are underrepresented in STEM fields, and of course, we are consequently in STEM professions. Many women and girls are held back from choosing STEM careers because of gender biases, norms, lack of support. Actually, UNESCO upcoming science report estimates that only 1/3 of all researchers are women. Gender equality in science makes a crucial contribution to socio-economic sustainable development. And on these terms, I would like to ask Dr. Floyd, as an organization with a strong technical component, what is the CTBTO doing to attract and empower early career women working in STEM?
I want to tell you about one thing we're doing. And it's not the whole thing, but just one. It's one that I'm really proud of my staff who identified something that needed to be done. They designed the program and now they've actually implemented it. And that is to do with the mentoring for early career women in STEM from underrepresented regions of the world, underrepresented in terms of the staffing within the CTBTO. And this came from an observation. There was a display in the rotunda here in the Vic, and it said something about skills development makes changes. We thought about it and thought, yeah, that's true, but if you really want to make change, you probably need more than that. And the change we're looking at is how do you increase the competitiveness of young women competing for technical jobs in the CTBTO. And so we saw that, yes, skills development is important, but we need to augment that with advice, with mentorship and guidance and exposure to various opportunities, whether they might be training activities inside the organisation, etc. So my staff designed our CTBTO CYG mentoring program, based on recognising we need to do capacity building and then augment it with these other personal inputs. And we had paired up 12 experts from within the technical parts of the organisation with 12 mentees. I'm delighted that we've got a whole bunch of the mentees here today. Can you put your hand up if you're a mentee in the CTBTO mentorship program? Okay, so scattered across here, out of the 12, we've got more over here. We've got a good number of them. So this program has been, in my view, wildly successful, is that one permanent mission then said, oh, we want to support our mentee to be able to go on to some of the training activities that we're doing for on-site inspection, inspection training. And then we found the resources to support 3 more who could do that. So the mentorship program becomes a springboard for greater opportunity, for greater exposure and enhancement. Surely this is going to improve the competitiveness. But if I could, if you'll just let me, I want to tell you that my summation of this is positive. But when I read one of the mentees' summation, I am so excited. And so I want to, it just disappeared off my screen because I was looking at it on Twitter. Oh, there it is, good. One of our mentees, Tuzar Win, who's in the room at the moment, this is her quote about the mentorship program. She says, "This mentoring program exceeded my expectations in terms of broadening my professional network and developing my academic writing skills. My mentor allowed me to see who I truly am and what I am capable of, which is more than I realised was possible." Wow. That is the kind of transformation and empowerment that I hope all of our young women in STEM get through the mentorship program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Floyd. And we will definitely be joining you on Friday for the ceremony.
Absolutely.
Going back to the EU. So we know that the EU is an active supporter of young women in STEM. And our question is, what is the EU doing to boost young women in STEM and their engagement through access to training, education, and professional networks?
Thank you very much. And of course, building on what Rob just been saying, and building on what I've been saying before on the constant support to the CTBTO since 2004, we have had, as I said, more than 8 decisions by the European Council to support CTBTO, up to 30 million euros were dispatched only to CTBTO in this context. And in this regard, of course, we have also supported the pilot project, which facilitates the participation of experts, in particular women scientists from developing countries, in Working Group B participation. And of course, since we speak here about the technical dimension of CTBTO, it's very crucial also to increase gender equality in these areas. And of course, we fully support, and I'm sorry I come only now to this point, the CTBTO Youth Group, and in particular having the pleasure to be with 2 eminent members here on the panel. And of course, this youth group, I think, is very important also as an inspiration for young women in STEM to basically come forward and participate and apply for certain positions and trainings. And through these joint actions, we have supported the youth group, as we were saying, but we have particularly supported participation in international events. And for instance, today, the science and diplomacy is, as we know, not the first time, and we have continuously supported this. We have also supported the science and technology event, the next one taking place spring next year. But in last year's event, I had the pleasure to be on a panel where the involvement of youth in CTBTO was evaluated, and fortunately positively. But there has also been financing of participation of members of the youth group in the so-called Astana meeting with the group of eminent experts. And of course, youth group members' participation in the Article 14 conference, which was mentioned early this morning. And I think this is a very important forum, because Article 14 on entry to force clearly pointing to the future. And more concretely, we have funded developing and updating of CTBT e-learning modules and webinars in order to educate youth group members, in particular women in STEM, in participation in these activities. And of course, last but not least, to mention the so-called Citizen Journalism Academy has been financed by this, which provide a lot of inspiration for the interview which is taking place today. And maybe to sum up, all these activities, they provide youth members a unique opportunity to interact with internationally owned leaders in STEM. And this, of course, gives further dynamics in integrating them into future activities. Thank you.
That is actually really impressive. Here at the SDS, I have met other members of the youth group that have gone through these activities, and they agree on something. These activities are life-changing, because whether they develop their skills, they get to do this network, or they can even get a better understanding of their career path. So that's pretty life-changing. So I will now have a question for both speakers. We'll begin with Dr. Floyd. So the question is, how can the European Union and the CTBTO strengthen their cooperation to promote gender parity and gender equality for early career women working in STEM?
Thank you. The EU, I've got to say, is such a willing partner. It's not just because Stefan is sitting next to me and there are more EU flags than CTBTO flags on this podium. It's not that, but the EU actually puts their money where their mouth is, and that's greatly appreciated. The EU recognises that diversity in all of its forms, needs to be reflected in international organisations, and whether that's gender, geography, as in regions that are underrepresented, or generations and across the ages. So we certainly have benefited already by a range of programs that have been funded by the EU. And I don't want to take their support for granted, but I do. I do, because when the EU hears a good idea in this space, they are really keen to invest. So that's what a good partner looks like. So that is wonderful. There's just one thing that I think we should do a little bit more of, though, and that is to ask members of the CYG or members of the current mentoring program, what do you think we could do that could further enhance early career women in STEM into an organisation such as the CTBTO? Too often we sit with greyed or bald heads around a table trying to solve the issues of youth. Sounds pretty silly to me. So I would really like to hear the best of ideas from youth, as to what you think are the things, the impediments that you come up against, what we could do that could make a real difference. I'm glad of the things that we are doing and that they do appear to be making a difference, but never will I be satisfied. I really think we should and could do more. And just the final thing I'd mention is that, and this is for everybody in the room, do you all know what the term manel means? Manel as opposed to panel.
Yeah.
Okay. A manel is a male-only panel.
Yes.
And what I think we all in the room should do is make a stand. That if you are invited, gentlemen, to take part in a manel, please say no. Say no. Because it's a small step that you can make. I've had to do that once already in my time as executive secretary. It was a little awkward because it was the heads of organisations which happened to be all male. But the organisers looked at it and they worked out a way that they could do it. But that changes the landscape. And it's something that I think whether you're organising meetings or whether you're actually being invited, onto panels, no manels. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Floyd. Well, gentlemen, you do have homework. So, please, Ambassador, the same question.
Thank you. No, and first of all, let me echo, of course, the words of Rob about the very close partnership of the EU with CTBT. And of course, it needs to, to be partners, it has to come from both sides. So I think we work really hand in hand, and our partnership with CTBT is really an example of what we in the EU call as multilateralism at work, which is one of the key pillars of our basic international policy approaches. And this is, of course, participation of women in general is, of course, one of the important drivers to achieve this objective. And of course, I very well noticed the expectations raised by CTBT. And while I cannot make any firm commitments within 1 minute, of course, we very carefully take note. And I personally will involve myself to do my best. And in particular, you were speaking about mentorship programs. I think mentorship programs, and maybe as a side remark from my personal experience, when I was participating, and I'm quite old already, in CTBT negotiations in the mid-90s, I came as a scientist there, and this was a very disturbing world for me, very confusing and not easy to understand. And I was very glad that some more senior colleagues, they basically guided me through this kind of labyrinth. And this is why I think these mentorship programs, they are really of utmost value. And as a first step, of course, we will look into if we can come up with some additional support under EU Council decisions for this mentoring program for early career women in STEM. I think this is absolutely one of the priorities in this area. And of course, then the next thing, it was also mentioned before, I spoke about training and capacity building. And I think capacity building, especially for young women experts and scientists at CTBTO, this is also something which has to be looked at and maybe further strengthened, and which also includes the participation in conference, because in conferences the benefit can be enormous, not only by the discussions in the room and the side events, but also by the discussions in the margin. I think this is very crucial, and maybe we can come forward with something more concrete at the already mentioned science and technology event planned for June 2023. With this, I would thank you for having listened to these EU views.
I am so happy to hear this, Ambassador Clement. Mentoring program was such a huge help for us, and it is great that the European Union is looking for ways to make it sustainable, and it makes me really happy to hear and to note that other women like me in the Global South will be having the chance of joining later this mentoring program. Okay, so we will now go to the final remarks. We can conclude that addressing the gender gap is a multidisciplinary and intergenerational effort that requires work for everyone, every day. Considering the commitment from both Dr. Floyd and Ambassador Clement today, I would like to invite my peers to follow updates from the CTBTO youth group, to engage in their very impressive array of activities that go from research fellowships, journalism trainings, the Science and Technology Symposium, and join the next edition of the mentoring program. As an advocate for Latin America and the Caribbean youth, experience has shown me that once you want to handle global or local challenges, you have to make sure everyone's voice is heard. Everyone should be included in our conversation. And I actually want to turn these final remarks into a call for action. I would like to invite early career women like myself to not get discouraged, regardless of the challenges you may face, and seize any opportunity that comes your way. Also, follow the work of the European Union, the CTBTO, and other organizations, and make sure to take advantage of the capacity building and networking events. This will definitely bring you closer to growing your career and achieving success in the long term. Thanking the CTBTO and the European Union for their long-lasting efforts toward gender equality, I would like to urge them to continue their programs in support of the CTBTO youth group members in STEM. It is very important that gender equality and youth empowerment accompany every strategy, decision, and program produced by the two. Now I am giving the floor to Maggie for her final remarks.
Thank you so much, Alain, for your insightful remarks and the call to action, and particularly to Dr. Floyd and Ambassador Clement for being gender champions. So for my remarks, I appreciate each and every one of you coming to this discussion today and for your continued support to this cause. We have talked at length about how crucial it is to address the unique needs of women and young people in non-proliferation and disarmament, particularly through advocating for the CTBT's universalization and entry into force. Let me thank the EU for investing in and empowering the next generation of women in STEM through education, training, research, and advancing the role of women with technical and scientific backgrounds in the non-proliferation and security fields, as well as the CTBTO, particularly through the CTBTO youth group. Thank you. As demonstrated today, we must always measure our success, not just in whether the specific objectives of our organizations are met, but also whether through meeting these goals, we work to ensure gender equality or greater equality. To achieve gender equality, we need accountability frameworks to ensure that we all live up to our global commitments. And it is crucial to ensure that women and girls, as well as women's networks, participate in systematic and meaningful ways as agents of positive change and leaders. Gender equality needs to be implemented by design. The question is no longer what we can gain if women have equal rights as their peers. The question is, what will we lose? To conclude, I would like to mention a quote from the UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, and it says, "Achieving gender equality and empowering women and girls is the unfinished business of our time and the greatest human rights challenge in our world. So let's resolve it together." Thank you so much for being here and for your attention.
I want to thank you all, especially Dr. Floyd and Ambassador Clemens, to have accepted to be roasted by two young CTBTO women. I thank also the CTBTO youth and CTBTO for helping us to organize this and to make this possible. I thank you also to be here. I thank also the people watching on live stream, because I think that is also important to reach amongst our little cocoon here in the VIC. So I think that is very important. And what us as EU concerns, and this is the end of this side event, but I would like to invite you all to our next EU event, which is also in the Year of the Youth very important. We have our EU Multilateral Christmas Charity Gala, where we will collect funds for children in Ukraine to buy them virtual classrooms and computers. And this is happening in the Smut Theater on the 17th and the 18th of October. So I hope that you will all be able to come and buy tickets, or if you're not able to buy or to come, please give your donations. You can find everything on our website. Thank you very much and have a nice afternoon.
Great comments, you guys.
Would you like to take a photo together?